right. Slick Diaz from MMA Island here. Jason, the Hitman Hartley from fame. Jason, thanks for joining me today. How we doing?
I'm doing really good. Yeah. Just having a chill Sunday. Just uploaded today's video and really just kind of working on some new scripts, working on some new content today. So
nice. Yeah, that's what I've been doing too. The grind never stops, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no weekends really. I mean, you can relax a bit, but usually it just keeps going because you enjoy what you're doing. So
yeah, exactly. Well, in the MMA world, it almost seems like the weekend is the work week.
Yes, 100%. Especially if you're doing media event coverage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of shocking, like going to events and how much work you can put into a video that might just not get that many views.
Yeah,
like we started an extras channel where we would put up like uncut interviews, the stuff that we wouldn't put. Like we put John Jones' interview up, for instance, earlier this year, and that did really well. But you know, some of the undercard fighters, we know it's not going to do that well. But we put a lot of effort into it, putting like multiple camera angles. Most people only do one. But then you might just get like 200, 300 views off of that, where, you know, obviously on the MMA On Point side of things, for the main channel, we don't usually have a problem with that. Usually the views just come. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, to start, I just want to say it's a real pleasure to be able to sit down and have a chat with you. I wanted to start by reviewing some of the scraps we saw last night and what we make of them moving forward. As far as Eye versus Calvillo goes, there's a lot to discuss, but there are 4 performances that really got me thinking that I'd like to chat with you about.
Sure.
Yeah, so we've got the first one I wanted to talk about was the newcomer, Maria Agapova.
Yeah.
She put on a hell of a performance in her UFC debut. She raked in a performance bonus with a first-round submission over Hannah Cifers. I know it's early, but she seems like she has the stuff to be marketable and competitive in the women's flyweight division. What does it take, besides impressive performances, to start building a name for yourself as a young prospect?
I think she kind of did it immediately just by having a ridiculous presence in the cage. Like I remember I even tweeted about it, just how much different they were as people. Like you look at Hannah Cifers, like I've actually interviewed Hannah Cifers before in the past, and she is the most quiet, humble person you will ever meet in your life. Like it's actually kind of a tough interview because it's hard to get her to talk. She just doesn't really like express herself that much, and she's super, super chill. And then you look across the cage, Agapova's just like dancing, like looking at her like
lady.
Yeah, she looks like a I don't know if she is taller. I mean, she definitely looks a lot bigger to me than Joanna. It looks like I don't know, an equivalent of like a taller, bigger, and tatted up Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't have been more impressed with that performance. It was kind of hard to watch because, you know, when you do interview these fighters, sometimes you do have a bit of like, oh yeah, that person was really nice to me. That person was really cool, and you start to feel kind of bad. You know?
Yeah, I get extremely biased over my interviews and just being a fan. I can't be an analyst. That's not what I'm in the MMA game to do. I'm here to enjoy it and help people enjoy it. So I'm super biased all the time. I'm no down the middle guy.
Man, that's the best I can try to do is just be like, all right, well, I don't know who's gonna win.
Yeah,
I still make predictions. I still do, but especially if it's like Nate Landwehr, who's from here, I try not to make predictions on his fights because obviously no one from Clarksville, Tennessee, is hitting it big. You know, like we had Dustin Ortiz that was from here for a while, from Franklin, Tennessee, which is right outside of Nashville. That's like 40 minutes from here. So it's really, really rare to get somebody from the hometown. So I was like, when I especially when he did his debut fight, I'm like, I'm not even gonna predict this one because I'm gonna be so.
I mean, that guy's electrifying. Blood, sweat, and a good ass fight.
Well, the crazy thing is I live, so Clarksville, Tennessee, maybe has about 130,000 people here. It's not a huge place, but this dude is all about Clarksville in a way that nobody that I know lives here is all about Clarksville. Like St. B is just the area next to the mall. And so after his fights, he's like, St. B. Like,
some Bryce Mitchell tendencies.
Yeah.
Like, every time you put a mic in my face, I'm going to say Arkansas. Like that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I appreciate that. Actually, I really enjoy it. I think it's super entertaining, and I'm super into it. But yeah, I agree with you. The more you interview these fighters, the more of kind of a biased perspective you start to get, and it's so hard to pull yourself out of that. But with that one, yeah, pretty much knew. Also, the Angela Hill fight, that Hannah probably wasn't going to win those fights.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I mean,
so.
Angela's on fire, except for her, like she's been on a streak.
I thought she won that fight too.
Well, yeah, it was super close.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually scored it for her. So, I mean, to her credit, I mean, I think.
Well, where does she lie in the rankings now? She fell out. Did she fall out of the rankings after that fight?
Oh, good question. I would imagine she's got to be in the top 10 after a performance like that. Even still, just being so close.
She's not in the top 15 on the UFC ranking site.
Oh man, we're talking about Angela Hill.
Yep.
Oh, that is a ripoff.
That's disappointing.
That's like them putting what is it, Zhang above Shevchenko in the women's pound for pound. It's like
very interesting.
Yes, I get that China is a big market. I totally get it. But their rankings of ability, it's not supposed to be who we like the most and who can get us into key demographics. It's like, is this a sport or not? So let's rank people on their merits, not, I don't know, where they're from. That's
do you think it's the same thing with Petr Yan getting the title shot because he has the potential to rake in such a huge fan base behind him?
I think it's more true about Aldo. Like Petr Yan, I think it's him versus Aljo, and that's who it should have been. So they got 50% of the equation right for me. Like they got half of it right. Like Petr Yan is super dope. I've actually met him in person too.
Oh, I bet he's cool.
Yeah, that's the reason why I say Pyotr, because he was like, "Don't call me Peter." He does not like that. He's like, that's not how you say it. I guess I should be saying Fyodor though instead of Fedor if I go by that logic.
That's what popped in my head. I was like, oh yeah, so I'll just say it like Fedor likes it.
Yeah, like if Fedor told me face to face, like, please say Fyodor, I would probably do that. But I've been calling him Fedor since I've been a fan, so that would be pretty hard to shake. But with Pyotr, it's like, all right, he was fairly new to me when I had that conversation with him. Yeah. So
Speaking I was actually. Of- No, go ahead.
I was going to say that was just as a fan at an event, and he like literally was just standing next to me. I was like, I know you.
Oh man, I bet the live atmosphere is wild. I've never been to one. I'm sure it's crazy.
It's good and bad. It's in some ways terrible. Like when Zhang actually was fighting Joanna, we covered that event. And that was our 500K subscribers party. We were already at like 600,000 by then.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thanks, dude. I appreciate that. The issue, we had to push it back so far because we hit that somewhere around like November, but that was like the holiday season. So you got Thanksgiving, Christmas, all that kind of stuff going on. It's like there's no way we're going to be able to travel out to go to something like that now. And so we pushed it back to like March is what it ended up being. But the rest of the guys were in the stands while me and Tom and our Brazilian guy, Cautino, was working with us inside the media tent. So we didn't actually have to sit in the stands, but while Zhang was fighting Joanna, there was literally somebody right behind all of our guys that were just like, kimchi, Asian stereotypes, shit. Like they were just yelling it the whole time. And it's like, God, like I can't fight for the life of me, but that would make me want to fight someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the obnoxious people mixed with like just sensory overload. If you're like me,
yeah.
I don't like going to big crowds, loud events. Like I would go to a UFC event, but
right.
I'd take earplugs and I'd make sure to eat clean a few days before so I don't get sick because of migraine. Like
oh wow.
So
nice.
I'm sure it does have its ups and downs.
Yeah,
but I want to.
Fans can suck a dick. I'll just say that. Like those fans can suck a dick. Most of them are cool, but those fans.
Oh, absolutely. Really suck, like, I mean, it even gets bad when you're laid back on your couch on Twitter and you're like looking at the UFC trending. And you're like, oh my goodness, what are these people smoking?
Yeah, like most fans are good, but there are some real shitty ones that just, oh man, like what are you guys doing? Get out of here. Stop.
So I want to move on to Merab Dvalishvili. He broke his own. He was I was just so excited for him to fight. Him and the Feely fight or what got me going for yesterday. He broke his own record for takedowns in a single bantamweight fight, clocking in 13 over UFC newcomer Gustavo Lopez. he called out the Sugar Show himself for his next fight, Sean O'Malley. First, what do you make of Duwalish Willie as a prospect? Do you think the matchup gets made? And how do you see the fight going? I'm asking for a Hartley prediction.
Yeah, I actually really like the fight with Sean O'Malley more than I like Sean O'Malley versus Cody Garbrandt. I think I would be a bigger fan of the Cody Garbrandt fight, but we're looking at a prospect right now in Sean O'Malley, and I'm just like, okay, you're going from pretty much like Eddie Wineland has done some amazing things in this sport, but Eddie Wineland is so far out of his prime right now. Like,
just step up, no matter what.
And it's really commendable that that dude is in the UFC now. That tells you how good Eddie Wineland is. But there is a large gap between him and somebody like Cody Garbrandt, who, with a knockout like the one that he just earned, you're like, man, that guy could be right back in the title hunt again, even though he had those 3 really bad, losses. And so for me, it was just one of those kind of things where it's like, all right, well, I love the Garbrandt fight, love that fight, but let's slow it down a little bit. Let's take care of the prospects so they don't, lose their steam, and you have this big star. I mean, the biggest star by far of that show was Sean O'Malley. Like, if you look at all the YouTube analytics for everything, like,
it was off the charts.
Off the charts for him, absolutely. So
like 400 something in the first day compared to like 60 for another fighter.
For Amanda Nunes, like, man, especially, like, I know she's not the most popular, but she was at least the headliner, and you've got to give her some credit for that. But she was doing like 10,000 views on a lot of her interviews, some as low as 2,000 from like MMA Junkie, like not like a small outlet, like big outlets. And you look at Sean O'Malley, and he was doing like 400,000 viewers on almost every interview, at least 300,000 or 270, somewhere around that range, just absolutely killing it. So I think you got to take care of those stars. And that's what I love about a Merab fight, because he is on the come up as well.
He's in that same spot.
Exactly, yeah. So I think it's a great fight. And he really impressed me when he beat Casey Kenny back at Rio Rancho, because Casey Kenny had beat Ray Borg, and Ray Borg is usually the one that's out wrestling people. And Casey Kenny was undersized for that fight, but you really saw a big difference in the wrestling when Merab fought him. So I'm a big fan of those two matching up, and as just 2 prospects, it just makes all the sense in the world. I think I probably actually would give it to Merab, though. That's the difficult part about it, because I'm saying you got to take care of your big stars and prospects. And so how can you put him up against somebody like Cody Garbrandt if he's got guys that are at his level that I think could possibly win? Because, I mean, what is going to beat somebody like Sean O'Malley? It's not going to be somebody who doesn't have stand-up power. I mean, Cody Garbrandt could definitely do it. He could clock him once in the same way that he did last week. But Merab has the takedown ability, so he could just totally nullify that entire offense. And Sean O'Malley's saying he's been really working on his ground game, and he feels like he's got a strong one. So now is the best time to test it, instead of putting up against the top of the division, where he could definitely get eaten alive with some of those guys, if he doesn't have good takedown defense, specifically in the takedown arena. I'm sure he could eat them alive in the stand-up. But, yeah.
Well, it's mixed martial arts, man,
Yes.
Like, you got to
have it all.
I was talking to Tim Welch on an interview a couple months back, and he said the USADA drama with Sean turned out to be a huge blessing in disguise, because he was so young and so talented that he would have been fed to the sharks already.
Yeah, I believe that.
So that gave him an extended period of time to work on his BJJ and ground game with guys like Taquinho, and they're really. I'm a big Sean fan. I can't lie. I'm super
he's super dope. Yeah, he's great. I love him.
I just think that one, he's got a lot to prove, but I think people only see one thing and assume that he doesn't have anything else in his game. Much like Israel, like a year and a half ago, people were like, Israel is, once someone actually wrestles him, he's over and stuff. Like, and it's just, you got to let these dudes prove themselves before you start making blanket statements about them.
Yeah, and so my counter to that, and I realize you're not necessarily saying that about me, but my pushback to that is we just have to see him do it. Like,
absolutely.
At some point or another, you got to get out there and demonstrate it. You can tell me about it all day, and I believe you. I believe that you're telling me earnestly that, as if Sean O'Malley.
No, I'm in agreement, man. I'm in agreement.
Yeah. So I believe Sean O'Malley when he says he's been training real hard. I believe his training partners when they say the same. But, I also
we got to see it live.
Yep. Yeah, it's got to go down at some point. So I'm all on board for it. I want to see him show that. I'm all on board for it. Yeah.
Well, I'll let you in on my hot take for that fight. If it gets booked, I'm picking Sean via submission to shock the world. But I'm crazy, so don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. I'm nuts.
Where do you stay in Albuquerque?
Oh no. I'm in Texas.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Wait, so where does Sean O'Malley train?
He fights out of Soul Fighters in Arizona. I think it's in Arizona with Tim Welch.
Okay.
And then he goes to whatever the other gym is. I forget the name. But that's where they do their like advanced grappling is over with Taquino and them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought they trained out in Albuquerque, but I think I'm just assuming that because of Jackson Wink.
I think it's in Arizona. I might be totally off on that. I'm pretty sure that's where.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Thirdly, man, Marvin Vettori made a hell of a statement last night in the middleweight division. Carl Roberson isn't a premier name, but with all the drama, yeah, I mean, Carl Roberson is good for sure. But with the drama with the missed weights and the pullout and the booking it multiple times, he pulled off a first round finish as well. He already has a history with the current king of the middleweights, Israel Adesanya, with a split decision loss.
It wasn't that bad of a loss. It really wasn't.
It was close. I mean, people on the internet say I was on my podcast the other day doing fight picks, and one of my co-hosts said, like, really, really honestly, he was like, is Israel Adesanya undefeated? And I was like, yes. And then he goes, no, he's not. Like, about the Vettori fight.
Oh, wow.
Just in a humorous way. But
okay. I was like, no way you actually think he won that fight. Like, I thought the fight was much closer than people were scoring it, because sometimes what happens, I find this happening with commentary. And I think, obviously, I'm huge fans of everyone that's on commentary nowadays. But when those two were fighting in particular, I felt like so much of the narrative was being focused on as opposed to what was actually happening in the fight. Mm-hmm. So there were so many things like, man, Israel Adesanya is so smooth and he keeps doing all these things. It's like, Marvin just landed a jab though. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, there's a distinct, like, there's definitely. I'm a huge fan of all the commentary guys. People are like, this guy's not my favorite or whatever. Yeah. I like all of them. But there is some ground to be covered as far as improvement for unbiased commentary.
Yeah, and I don't think they were being biased at all. Like, I think they were commentating on the spectacular things that Israel Adesanya was doing. And I think they're in the moment, because I'll say this, when I do fight companions or whatever on this channel, half the time I'm drinking and I'm like, dude, I don't even know who just won that round. Yep. I'm doing it with a friend. And so we're just hanging out, talking about things as we're seeing it. And you start to miss little details because you're trying to describe things to the people that are there watching with you, or you're trying to have a conversation with the audience, like the live chat while we're doing these, and you start to kind of lose track of things. And so they do a far better job of that than I would ever do. So
absolutely, I'm just saying, I will give them all the credit. Swept away in the highlights of it. It's hard. I mean, I'm sure it's really difficult. I don't even live score rounds because it's too hard to enjoy a fight for me and try to score it. So I go back after and try to, like, if something was close, I look at it more instead of just being a fan. But yeah, do you do live scoring when you watch?
Yeah, I do live scoring. Do you find yourself going back on things that you thought you saw for decisions in the past? Like, oh yeah, I thought Reyes beat him the first time, and I went back and watched it. I thought John Jones won. Or anything crazy like that, or is it more? Yeah,
sometimes like I went back and watched the Marlon and Aldo fight, and watching it live, I thought Aldo won. But running it back, I was like, this wasn't a robbery at all. It was a super close fight, and both, like, I should be happy with either of these dudes winning because it was just a good performance. It was fun to watch. So it's hard because I find myself rooting for the guys like that just have this standing, like, in the culture. Like Aldo, I was just like, man, he could really make more of a legacy by making this run, and then so I'm pulling for him subconsciously. So it's important to go back and do that kind of stuff for me. So I don't sound like a dumbass or a biased loser.
That is the risk when you do like I think what was it? What was the title fight the other day? It was Amanda Nunes versus, how am I forgetting this?
Felicia Spencer.
Yeah. So literally before the fight, I was like, so talking about putting out predictions and saying things on Twitter and sounding like a dumbass. I definitely did. I was like, you know what? A lot of people are counting Felicia Spencer out. I swear she's got a shot at this.
I said the same thing, bro.
Yeah, and then right after that tweet happened, the fight started and never went any other direction than Amanda Nunes.
Oh, she won every second.
It was not by any. I mean, they were talking about stopping the fight for the 5th round. The commentary team was, and I agreed with it because it was just like, there's nothing, there's no hope, there's no prayer of winning this fight at this point in time. She would have to be handed a baseball bat or some shit.
Yeah, exactly. Give her a weapons box.
Yes, give her some. We need to even the odds a bit here. That's what we need. It wasn't going to happen.
Man, so moving on to the main event, and then we'll get into some community questions from my viewers and followers. Awesome. Cynthia Calvillo made her return to flyweight for the first time in the UFC in the main event of the evening versus Jessica Eye. She brought home a clear decision over the number 1 contender. We can figure what that does for the rankings as far as, oh, she beat the number 1. That means she's probably number 1. But what does that mean for the queue of title fights? What do you think? Do you think she's going to leapfrog the likes of Modafferi and Calderwood? Can we expect her to get the next title shot off of, one UFC victory in that division?
Absolutely not.
It's crazy.
I got to say, man, like, that was another thing that I tweeted out last night. Like, it was a lesson in quantity versus quality last night. There were some really great fights, especially on the first half of the card. We had, what was it? 3 finishes in 3 minutes?
Insane. Yeah, like less than 30 seconds for the first 2 or 3 fights.
So you can produce some really great results just by a sheer factor putting on fights. But I think especially the main event, I watched the whole thing. I was here. I was literally sitting in this seat watching it, on the screen that I'm looking at right now while I'm talking to you. And I watched the whole thing, but dude, I was not into it. The stakes didn't mean anything. For me, Calvillo, I think she's great. I think she could be at the top of the division. It's just that Jessica I just don't think is that person. So the stakes weren't there. I think Calvillo could have been put up against somebody like a Modafferi or something like that and be like, now we're talking.
I agree. I think that it shouldn't have been I for that fight. I totally agree.
Yeah, the only thing that they had for I was that number next to her name, which I felt was a bit overblown. I think there's so many things that have changed since that Shevchenko loss. I know she had a win after that, but even still, that wasn't enough to jump her ahead of all the other great performance that has happened in the division since then. So I don't know. I'm trying to kind of look at what else we have up here. Like, yeah, JoJo Calderwood would have been a far more interesting fight. Maya would have even been a more interesting fight. Modafferi, as you mentioned, Lauren Murphy. I don't know. Maybe I would have stuck with Calderwood, Maya, Modafferi, or even Chookagian.
To me, Chookagian's the number 1 contender, man. She's impressive everywhere.
Well, just because of what she just did to Shevchenko's sister, like there's at least that interesting factor of almost like revenge there that happened betwin family members.
See, that was my kind of fight.
Yeah. Yeah, and she dominated that fight, so at least there would be some sort of intrigue in there. And Jessica I give I a lot of respect. She was at 135 in its heyday, when it had the biggest stars there, and she was considered at the top of the division. She was actually beating Miesha Tate until Miesha Tate landed a huge right hand on her in Chicago when that was Barao versus Dillashaw too. I was there for that one. I got a chance to go to that one. So like I've seen Jessica I when she was at the top of the division, and she's a real pioneer for women's MMA. So I give her a ton of respect. But on the same token, I don't think we're looking at the same person as we were looking at back then. And frankly, 125 is, it's suffering what every other division in the women's side of things is suffering from in the UFC right now, except for 115. You pretty much got Shevchenko dominating as the ruler of the division. You've got the same thing with Nunes at 135 and 145. And 115, I feel is the more stacked division of all of them.
I don't even think that's a question.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. And that's why people are talking about Zhang versus Shevchenko. And I actually like that a bit more than the Nunes fight, just because the Nunes fight happened so recently. And we're only talking about 2 years. Like, it would be amazing if she beat Zhang or somebody like that. And then, okay, now let's throw her up against that. But
Yeah.
I think the only way that would make sense is if Zhang went up. Because
oh yeah, absolutely.
If Shevchenko goes down, I mean, it's going to look like Dillashaw. You know what I mean?
She's already lean when she went, like, she's already
lean.
Yeah.
Tangents galore. I'm pulling us on tangents.
No. It's okay. That it makes it more fun. I like it.
But yeah, I agree with you. That it should have been somebody like a Roxanne Modafferi in that main event instead of Jessica Eye. Again, all the respect to Jessica Eye, but she is by no means what I would consider the number one of the division. No way.
Yeah. People have been saying it for a long time. The rankings don't mean shit. So
and fights like that demonstrate it. I don't know what the UFC wants with these rankings. I don't know what they're going for, because yeah, it might fool a casual fan. It might, but the truth is like all this stuff does start from the hardcore community, whether the UFC likes to ignite that or not. Like, why wasn't Conor McGregor versus, I don't know, anybody on his come up? So Dennis Seaver, why wasn't that a pay-per-view headliner that sold 1.2 million buys? The casual fans knew Dennis Seaver as much as they knew Aldo. Casual fans aren't walking around the street like, oh yeah, I've watched all those fights, but I've never seen anyone else. The casual fans don't know who these people are. And so the thing that made that work absolutely was the title. So that can work for people to where there's some objective reality. But Jose Aldo was exalted by the hardcore community first. The hardcore community are the people that can, and reporters too. Reporters are just as much hardcore fans. They're the ones that proselytize this stuff to the casual fans more than anybody. They're the
SAT words, kids. Proselytize.
It's a good word. Look it up. We're the ones that tell people why they should care, because I know it every single time when I have a fan that is more casual on that side that reaches out to me, that lives here in town or something like that. And it's like, dude, is this fight going to be good? They don't know. So they actually reach out to the hardcore fans. And to some extent, yes, Kimbo Slice is always going to sell well against Ken Shamrock at the age of 72. You know, like,
well, it's that freak show. It's that freak show element.
Yeah, there are
not
rare
to call it that. I hate calling it that, but
it was a freak show. It was a freak show. Yeah, I fully agree with you. All respect in the world to Kimbo Slice. It's not about, who he was. It's about, I think, people exploiting old age for views and things like that. So for me, yeah, like, to a certain extent, rankings do boast a little bit, but if you don't have hardcore fan support, like if you don't have this, I don't know, backdrop of this is an incredible fight and all the people who watch this stuff are going insane for how good the fight is, then it's really hard to get the casual fan to buy in, because it's like, well, I talked to this dude the other day who watches all the time, and he's not excited about the fight at all. Like,
yeah, it's like, because he knows 6 levels more than you. Like, it's
yeah. It starts with a hardcore community, and I don't think that that's appreciated enough. Like, you really have to, in some ways, kind of placate to that. And I understand this is saying somebody who runs a list channel about MMA, but I mean, in the same way that Tough was the Trojan horse for the UFC, lists are the Trojan horse for casual fans. You talk about the specific aspects of the sport that they would never know otherwise without watching one of our videos. So I'm all on board with having rankings, but use them for real, and that's when they actually work. Because no one gave a shit last night that Jessica Eye had a number 1 next to her name when no one believed that to be the case. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything if you don't actually give it real engine power. You don't give it real fuel. At the end of the day, people just won't tune in. And I guarantee you the ratings for last night were abysmal, even during pandemic when no other sports are happening. I guarantee you it was just god awful.
Well, I was in a watch party, and the disrespect, Jason. Like, we got.
You were at a watch party.
Well, I was on an online, like, Discord watch party or something.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
And then like, we were just all watching and then, like, chatting with each other. And as soon as Vittori Roberson ended, everyone did the, all right, I'm out, It's a bummer, man. So I watched it all alone, and I was like, "Yep, this is my life."
Did you see Dana's comment where he said, "If you're really a fight fan, you enjoy watching all fights." Mm-hmm. My mind immediately jumped back to UFC 33 when every fight went to a decision, and he's been on the record saying every fight sucked that night.
But that's one of his handful that was a bad card.
Yeah, it's like, so you're going to tell me that I think that was
who headlined that?
It was Tito Ortiz, and it was a decision against he's the Russian wrestler guy that John Jones beat, like
Vladimir Matyushenko.
That's correct. That was UFC 33, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Victory in Vegas, I think is what they called that one. That was their like coming out party.
Yeah, at the Mandalay Bay.
They were finally back on pay-per-view. They were finally in Vegas, and then the card sucked. So it's like, you're going to tell me that at least that card had some star power, and I realized it did run over pay-per-view, and they had to refund a bunch of people because of that. But you're going to tell me that card was not as bad as last night's? Like, I don't buy that. If you go by headline pay-per-view value, like at least Tito had a dominant performance, and it meant.
Well, I mean, look at who was on that. Just on the A side, you had Tito Ortiz, Jens Pulver, Chuck Liddell, and Matt Serra.
Yeah, I mean, fuck off, Dana. Fuck off.
Please
continue credentialing me for events, though. But fuck off, Dana.
Speaking of the point you made about Tough being the Trojan horse for MMA. There's been rumors heating up that it's making a comeback. Online, and I don't know the details of it. I'm no insider, but if you could pick two fighters to coach it, who would it be?
I don't give a shit about that show.
You don't care? Oh, see, I do, but that's fair.
I'm a huge proponent of telling people to go back and watch the early seasons. Like the first season was incredible. Even the second season, which was really a shit show by all means, because Ken Shamrock was such a terrible coach. That was Ken Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz. The fifth season was incredible. I mean, that was when Nate Diaz came around. You had Gray Maynard on there. Joe Lozon. You had
with Caro Parisian slapping him up and stuff.
That was great. That was a great moment on the show. Yeah, and then he beats his cousin. What's his name? I can't remember.
Gambarian.
Manny Gambarian. Yeah. So he beats his cousin on the finale. So there's some poetic justice at the end of that with the Caro Parisian thing. So, I'm a big proponent of the early seasons, but I have become a much bigger fan of the Tuesday Night Contender Series over Tough. And I had some initial critiques when Tough came out. I've even said that in videos. But the Tuesday Night I think I just said Tough there. I meant to say Tuesday Night Contender Series. But the Contender Series is really picked up. You notice like half the cards they're putting so many people on the Contender Series now that half the cards – new people are Contender Series. So it's becoming the outside of fighting in like LFA or something like that, or some of these other kind of big promotions.
Yeah, it's a feeder league circuit. Almost.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The Contender Series is starting to overtake even those. LFA is by far, I would say, the best production value, puts on the best fights. I mean, Texas, for whatever reason, just has so many fighters out of there, and that's where they're based out of. It's just such a hotbed for new and upcoming talent. It's not too far away from the California scene to bring people out, because obviously you have more budgets for a regional show. But then, so I'm actually more of a proponent of that. But interesting on that point, though, did you know, like, I'm actually writing a list on this now. Tough was originally not going to be anything it was originally supposed to be called the American Promoter. It was a spinoff. It was a spinoff of American Casinos, which was what followed the Fertitta brothers around. So, like, the dude that you always see talking about The Ultimate Fighter, that was the producer for it. I forget his name, but he's the guy that came up with Survivor. He was the co-founder of that the UFC somehow got to talk about first casinos with the Fertitta brothers. So it was American Casino. Then he pitched American Promoter to follow Dana around. And it literally would have been like one of his old video blogs where you just follow him around all the time.
Yeah, looking for a fight.
Somebody out. Yeah, or Dana White looking for a fight. So it would have been just following him around on his job. Dana actually hated the idea. And then Joe Silva came up with the idea of like, well, what if we put everybody in a house and they all fight? Apparently, they didn't have the greatest ideas though, because they were still eliminating people in the first season if they lost a stupid game. Like, oh, you lost the tug of war, you're off the show. Like,
yeah, that kind of stuff. See, like, there's definite pros and cons to the Ultimate Fighter, but I think, like, as someone who got into MMA within the last like 5 years, it serves as a monumental building block for understanding history and like getting to know fighters that are in the UFC now, the legends. I think that Tough is unmatched when it comes to character building and like not putting on an act, but like showing you who these guys are. And that as a fan, that's what draws me in the most. So
if you were to look at like the last few years of Tough, like who have they realistically brought to the title kind of helm? You know, if you were to just think of it offhand, like if you look at the first 5 seasons, you absolutely could have. You know, you had Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner, and obviously Forrest became a champion. Rashad Evans was season 2. I'm blanking on season 3, but of course Nate Diaz and, you know, everybody on season 5. And you can
and then you had 12 at Tony, I think, or like 7, whatever it was, 7 or 12 or something.
Yeah, you had season 10, which had, you know, Matt Mitrione. That was the Rampage Rashad coach season that had Kimbo on it. There was a point in time where I feel like it was bringing across stars, but I think now it's a really smart decision for a fighter to say, no, I'll just go into the Contender Series, because then I don't have to fight 3 or 4 times in such a short span of time, cut weight like a madman throughout all that time. You can never really eat, so you're not healthy. You're not yourself. I mean, how many fighters have gone through that show? Like Paulo Costa. He was on the Brazilian version of it, got eliminated in, I think, the second round.
I can't find that anywhere, by the way.
Oh, really? It should be on the new version of Fight Pass. I will say has some weird issues with it, where it's like you'll click on something that's supposed to be a card, and it just won't load, and it'll bring you back to the homepage. But it used to be on there. So that was where I'd actually seen his fights from that season. But like really, really good fighters sometimes look terrible in that show, and I think it's because of the circumstances. And so I think if you're really
like James Krause is a good example of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, man, I mean, there's just so many. It's almost like hard to mention all the names, but like, I think the issue is now if you're an upcoming fighter, why the hell would you go on that show?
No, you make a great point, because like it's the smarter, faster, more efficient route to get to where you need to go. That the Tough thing is for fan consumption, not for healthy prospect building. I totally get what you're
saying. Yeah. I think it's a much more dangerous career decision, because you can lose one fight on the Contender Series and bounce back, no problem. But if you lost 3 or 4 times on that show, that's going to demoralize you. Your own like psyche. You're going to be like, man, I lost. Maybe I'm not good enough to be in the UFC. Like, I have no doubts that is totally thrown off people's career, where maybe they had all the confidence in the world. Like even Pettis said this after he lost to RDA. It was like he lost for a few years that ability to see himself as invincible as he saw himself. Yeah, like I'm the best in the world. Like he really had a mental issue with it. And so if you're losing like 2 or 3 times on a show, you know, like, I mean, it's got to really fuck with you, you know? And then there's the opposite of it too, where we had somebody like Artem Lobov make it to the finals against Ryan Hall.
Well, that was crazy. I was watching clips of that the other day, and it reminded me he got booted off. Like he lost a decision to a British prospect who had visa issues.
Yeah, he didn't even make it into the show.
Yeah,
but somehow got picked for the wild card. Like what? That is like that's Conor McGregor pulling the strings 1000%. He didn't even make it on the show, and somehow he's a wild card pick.
Apparently, Ryan Hall was training in Ireland with Artem Lobov for the finale when he got the call that he was going to be the opponent.
No shit.
That's what if you look up best Ryan Hall moments on Tough, there's like a 20-something minute long video. You'll see what I mean if you want to check that out.
Cool. Yeah.
So let's get into some community questions. Just a basic one. What inspired the team to start MMA On Point, and how crazy is it to be one of the premier platforms for MMA media for the fan consumption?
Yeah.
We all love you, man. We all love y'all.
I appreciate it, dude. Have you ever heard of What Culture by chance?
Mm-hmm.
What culture? So, for those of the audience that don't know who that is a UK-based YouTube company. And so a couple of years ago, like 2016, somewhere around there, I was working a job right out of college, type kind of thing, working in communications. My job was, kind of cool, but my boss was an asshole.
Yeah.
And I left. I was like, dude, I'm not doing this anymore. And the thing is, I was basically doing everything I'm kind of doing now for the YouTube channel, graphic design, video editing, all that sort of thing. And I was working like 80, 90-hour work weeks. It wasn't appreciated. And I was like, I've got to get out of here. And whatever I do from now on, it has to be something that I'm passionate about, because I know who I am. I'm going to be the type of person that's going to want to pour myself into my work. And I'm probably going to be working long hours no matter what. That's just how driven I am. And so that was when I applied to work with What Culture, because I was like, it's a YouTube channel. Like, I love the kind of content they put out. Like, I don't even like pro wrestling, and I like their pro wrestling content.
Me too. So during this quarantine is actually when I learned about What Culture.
Oh, wow.
I've been watching all of their WWE stuff. It's hilarious, man.
Yeah, their old shit, when they used to have Adam Blampier, who works for another channel now. I don't keep up with it as much anymore, but I was like, somebody should do this for MMA. Why the hell is nobody doing this for MMA? So when I applied, I had that in mind. And when I was there, I didn't edit for their wrestling channel. I edited more for their video gaming channel, and I edited more for their film channel. So that was what I was primarily doing for them. And then finally, they decided to kind of take me up on the offer to head up their MMA channel. And I made 2 videos, and they hated them. Like, they just straight up didn't like them.
What a buzzkill.
Yeah, and they didn't pay me for it either, which is really shitty. I was a freelancer, and they just straight up didn't pay me for it. And I put a fuck ton of work into that stuff. Tom was a part of that process. Tom also worked for What Culture. And they just kind of rejected everything that we were trying to put forward. And we were like, okay, well,
let's do it ourselves.
Yep. Because the thing is, I've got the writing ability. I've got the editing ability. My videos were getting millions of views. Like, I edited videos about the Joker, for instance, that would get like 6 million views on What Culture's channel. Tom had done the same for the wrestling channel and everything else. And it's like, well, we understand the format. We understand how to write, but we're also insanely hardcore fans of MMA. And I feel like we can bring more authenticity to it. So if I'm going to kind of nitpick at What Culture, I don't think they're really that big of fans about half the things that we're talking about. I usually don't talk this much shit about What Culture, but what they'll do is they'll find a freelance writer, and there's no connection to the person who wrote the script to the person who's voicing it. Whereas, we have our meetings on Mondays, we all work on the ideas together, and then we handcraft it with kind of a ghostwriter in the background. And then we make further edits on it before we voice it. We're very involved. It's a very team building type kind of process. And A1
synergy.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes a whole lot of sense to work together like that. And so that was what brought us together. And we started that, luckily, the same month of Mayweather versus McGregor. So right off the bat, Tom came up with a brilliant idea. 7 boxers who actually think Conor McGregor can beat Mayweather. And that jumped to like 1 million views out of nowhere. And it was real boxers saying it. I mean, it was like Evander Holyfield was giving Conor McGregor a shot. And it was really shocking at the time to hear. And it's like, well, let's make that a video. And it blew up. It hit like 1.3 million views by the time of the fight on that Saturday night. And that really sent us on our way. Obviously, that strictly MMA, but talking about Conor McGregor. And we just knew we had a winning formula. We knew we gave a shit. We knew we had the technical ability. We knew we cared enough, and we knew that we were hardcore enough fans to get along and even debate the hardcore fans, at the same time, and really jump in the trenches. So that's where everything really started from. And we started kind of going full time with it within a year or something like that. It started out slow despite the big numbers because you have to get monetized and all that. But yeah, that's how it went down.
Hey, that's awesome, man. To switch routes a little bit, what did you expect from Fight Island before it got announced to be Yas Island in Abu Dhabi? What did you expect?
Yeah, so I expected it to be a different island. I expected it to not to be where they've literally hosted events
I was so disappointed, man. It's going to be cool. I was mad disappointed.
I mean, so obviously this is kind of a dark turn that I'm taking to answer this question, but I don't know if you saw the Jeffrey Epstein documentary on Netflix yet, but they showed his island, which was a really small, like micro island. And I would figure that they would have some friends in high places. I mean, Donald Trump.
Well, that was one of the initial rumors.
Yeah. I don't think they were really going to go for that, but you start to think Firefest, and you think of the Pablo Escobar Island and stuff like that. Like, I really thought they would try to find an exotic location to make it amazing, because you're not going to have the audience, you're not going to have a local government to really worry about. They still have to worry about UAB. They still have to worry about that government. Like, we're applying for credentials for that now, and we have to apply for visas and all of that to even be able to get into, you know.
That's exciting, man.
Yeah, we haven't been approved yet, so fingers crossed that we will. We're definitely lower in the totem pole, you know, in comparison to MMA Fighting, MMA Junkie, Mac Life, all that kind of stuff, because they're real reporters. We're just fans. We're just assholes. So
didn't Bob Arum say something like that? Any guy with a camera or whatever can become a journalist, or whatever the quote is. But I think it's totally true, and I think that's awesome, and that's the beauty of a free enterprise market, the world that we live in.
Well, I mean, I think if you're good enough at what you do, people will care and people will listen. And you know, I think we provide an absent, you know, it doesn't really exist in the MMA community, this kind of fan aspect. Like I was just talking about What Culture. I mean, What Culture blew up with fans talking about pro wrestling, and fans naturally want to hear that. They want to hear the kind of conversations that, you know, I might say something about a fighter that a reporter's too afraid to say because they have to interview him the next day. You know, I think I really respect those people, by the way. Like, I think they're going to do their best to be as honest as they can, but they have to be more diplomatic about it. And obviously that makes it a bit tougher for us going to events now. But, you know, at the end of the day, we've carved a thing to where if somebody says they don't want to interview with us, we can still just keep doing what we're doing and we're fine. It's more of kind of an additive thing. Our goal at the end of the day is just to be as honest about things as possible. And I think that's the reason why there's a market for that, because people want that same type kind of interaction of, what if you and I sat down right now and you wanted to know what I thought, and you were kind of a newer fan, or you are just as hardcore as you are now, and you can have these deep level discussions about things and jump into those without worrying about, you know, what Dana thinks or something like that, or what blah, blah, blah thinks. You can just speak honestly and truthfully about it and really just be a fan. You know, fan culture is a huge thing. I mean, there's so many outlets for it in other areas. It just doesn't really exist in MMA at the level it should. And that's been our number one goal from the beginning, you know?
Yeah, right on.
But I did expect I don't know how I got there, but I did expect like a micro island type kind of thing, just because the Fertittas are billionaires. They're friends with Donald Trump on a personal level. Dana's going to summits to meet with Donald Trump. You figure they would have known somebody that would have been able to work something like that out, and would have, I don't know, loved the publicity from it even, you know, would have got the shine from it. I did not expect it to be like, oh yeah, we literally had an event here last year.
Yeah, I feel like the logistics is what, like, in such a weird time, I don't know why I don't know why it didn't even cross my mind that it would be at the same place, because they get this radius, and it's a, you know, it's hot as hell over there, but like, you know, I think I'm not as mad at it as I was when I first found out, but yeah, it was super obvious, and mainly I'm pissed off I didn't know.
I think if you look the week before that, Dana started poo-pooing it a bit, like saying like, oh yeah, it's not going to be that great. Like, chill out. Like, I think he realized he had built it up too high. Like, he hyped it up like big time.
Helicopter posters and
if you look at when he was doing like press interviews for ESPN, or if he was going on news shows, TMZ, whatever it was, like a month ago when he was talking about doing the April 18th show with Habib and Tony, he kept saying like, oh yeah, I'm literally trying to get a Fire Island together. And he was hyping the shit out of it. And then the closer and closer it got to actually revealing, he was like, oh, I need to pull back a little bit. Because he oversold it. He oversold it 100%.
Oh, I was expecting a full-out Kumite, dude.
Yeah. That would have been badass.
Yep. This is a question from one of our followers. Where does a win over Stipe in their trilogy fight finale put DC in the GOAT conversation again? Surely it makes him the top dog at heavyweight to ever do it in the UFC. But what about the list, Mr. List Man? Where does that put him?
Yeah, I think Stipe at one point, I actually literally did call him the greatest heavyweight of all time in one of my previous videos, just because he holds that consecutive record of 3 title defenses. Nobody had done it consecutively. You know, obviously Randy Couture was champion multiple times, so he had more defenses than that, but he would lose it, you know. So Stipe had that, and he was beating the best, you know, like Verdum beat Kane. He knocked him out in like 5 seconds, you know, like he knocked him out really early into round 1. He knocked out Alistair Overeem, the most decorated heavyweight in history, you know. And then Ngannou is the most dangerous heavyweight, I would argue. It's like him and Shane Carwin, like the 2 most dangerous heavyweights in history in terms of punching power. Just put your lights out with a jab. Like,
yeah, effortless.
And Stipe thoroughly dominated him from bell to bell. And then DC knocks him out. Like, what in the world? So I think what we're looking at, and obviously the performance and the IQ that it took for Stipe to start targeting the body and changing up his game plan in a fight that he was handedly losing and finding a way to win showed that championship spirit. It showed everything about his fight IQ, showed how good he really is. So I think what we're literally talking about here is the top 2 heavyweights in history, you know, especially in the USADA era where things are so much stringent. You know, you can't accuse PEDs or anything like that of being part of the equation. I do think we're talking about the 2 best heavyweights. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too.
C-level Kane, I think maybe could have been better, but obviously injuries caught up to him, and unfortunately he never had the runway that we wanted. You know, he didn't have the string of 6, 7, 8 fights of being on top. He lost to JDS in that freak show, you know, massive shot in the UFC on Fox first fight show. And then he had the crazy loss to Verdum after it seemed like he was just going to be on top forever. And that's where I give the credit to Stipe, because he actually did it. He actually held the record, you know. So for me, yeah, that's where it lines up.
Do y'all have a list video for that? Because I can't remember. Y'all put out so much great stuff. Do y'all have a list video for like the versions of fighters?
Versions of fighters.
Like C-level Kane. Like
I know. I don't think we have done that. That's a good idea, though. I like it. You know.
There you go. Slick
Diaz. You said TRT tour, TRT V tour.
Dude, I can send you a list. There's a bunch, and people talk about it on Twitter sometimes. I can send you a list of a few. Yeah,
I mean that's actually a fantastic idea. Usually, I get a lot of requests for lists or things like that. Like, you guys should do this. It's like something we've already done before, or, you know, it's just not that compelling of an idea. Like most Conor McGregor moments. Like, yeah, Conor McGregor. I
got a Conor question coming up. Don't worry.
Yeah. But dude, by all means, send that to me. Like, I literally, if we've got 10 solid ones like Vitor and Kane, I would absolutely make that list 100%.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'll see what I can find and then see what I can come up with for you. I'd love to send that to you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
The next question's actually about the notorious one himself.
Who's that?
This guy. His name it's Carter McGowan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's some upstart, you know, and he's got crazy knockout power. Got death touch, some would say.
He'll make it one day.
Yeah. What do you think is the best matchup right now for the retired Conor McGregor? Because he's retired, but not.
I guess a walking cane, or I don't know, since he's retired, right?
Man.
I think what I would probably go after is somebody like a Nate Diaz or something like that. Because the thing I dislike about Masvidal is I think he'll probably get eaten alive in that fight. I don't see it as being that competitive. I think it would be a fun fight. It would be a blockbuster. It would set like crazy. And I would watch it just like everyone else. And I would love to see Conor defy my expectation there. I would love to see Conor shock
eat that fight up.
Out. Yeah, I mean, I know it would. Everybody would eat that fight up. I think it makes a lot of sense on the money front and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of quality of product for me, I would rather see him in a competitive fight. I would rather see him against anybody in the top 5. Of course, nobody believes he's retired, which is why we're having this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
sorry to defy reality, but you're matchmaking for a retired man.
Yeah. I don't buy it for a split second. He's going to be back before the end of the year, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that'll be my prediction. Before the end of the year or early next year, we'll see Conor McGregor back in the cage, the way I see it. So the Nate Diaz fight I like, because if Nate Diaz goes out and loses again, that just takes another step down. If Conor McGregor goes and fights Masvidal and gets knocked out, the Nate Diaz fight totally loses its luster from then on. So I feel like this is the kind of time to do it. I feel like it's a winnable fight for Conor, and if he loses, well, there you go. And I feel like it's the only fight he'll actually take. Like, you could put him in there against Charles Oliveira. That would be a great fight, but he won't take it because Conor McGregor is Conor McGregor, and he wants Conor McGregor level fights. You know, he wants to break records, that kind of thing.
He's got one of the most impressive streaks in the entire UFC, if you ask me. Charles Oliveira, he's in his last 6 or 7 in his last 6 fights, he's got all finishes and 5 performance bonuses, or maybe it's 8 and 7. That dude is the truth.
I think the problem with Oliveira is he's been around for so long, and he was such a highly touted prospect that just didn't work out. You know, like he fizzled out, and then he's making the comeback now, but everyone's like, oh, we've kind of seen this. You know, we've seen this guy make it to the top of the division and kind of flutter, which I think is unfair, because you need to judge his actual performances rather than his track record per se. Like, I think he deserves to be in that title hunt discussion. And I think that's the issue that he's up against, because, I mean, he was around in like 2013, you know, like we're talking 7 years, and then he had a string of losses that just knocked him so far out of contention, got submitted by Pettis at 145, for instance, you know? So it is hard to get hype around somebody that you've seen lose on the medium-sized stage. He's never been on the big stage, you know? He's never been like, oh yeah, this guy, we're going to put him in the headliner of, I think, like, has he actually headlined an event outside of this last one? He was the headliner against Kevin Lee, right?
I'll be honest, I don't know about his headlining status or his history about like that. I can never remember who headlined what card or what day, like what number card it was.
Sure.
My memory doesn't quite work like that, but no, I gather that you're probably right along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, what has he got now? Clay Guida, Yagos, Jim Miller, David Tamer. David Tamer is ridiculously good, so underrated. Nick Lentz, Jared Gordon, and then Kevin Lee. So that's 7 fights back to back. So
yeah, all finishes, 6 performance bonuses.
But when you look at his losses, so Paul Felder is obviously really good, but you know, he did just lose to Dan Hooker and semi-retired and kind of came back. But Paul Felder's never been at the top of the division either. You know, like Paul Felder has been a popular guy at the middle
exciting
of the division.
Middle ground that they both occupy. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's pulling for him. Everyone wants Paul Felder to do well because he's such a good, you know, just kind of guy. You know, like from every impression that you get from him, you know, he's a great commentator, really well researched, great analyst. Like, you just love everything about him and you want him to do well. But you know, that's somebody that he lost to. Oliveira lost to him. And then you've got Ricardo Lamas, of course, the Anthony Pettis one, Max Holloway, and then going back even further, Frankie Edgar, Cub Swanson, Donald Cerrone, Jim Miller. And then he's missed weight like 100 times. So he started in the UFC in 2010. So after 10 years, it is hard to kind of come back from that. But he's done the work, though. He's got the 7 wins. I just think that's the uphill battle that he's facing with fans right now. I'm totally on board with him, but I think that's the issue he's facing right now.
I think 1 or 2 more impressive stoppages, it's going to be a totally different conversation.
I agree. If he has another, it can be just like RDA was. You know, RDA went from seen as like a journeyman getting knocked out by Jeremy Stevens to out of nowhere just at the absolute top of the division and dominating guys like Pettis, guys like Donald Cerrone, just totally destroying them, you know? So I do think that if he can get another couple wins, that he'll get over that hurdle, that hill that he's climbing right now of getting over fan perception will be totally gone, because that's the good thing. That's the other side that people don't think about. You're only as good as your last fight can be really true if you look amazing against someone too. So it goes both ways. It's like, I mean, just think of what we were thinking about Anthony Rumble Johnson when he got kicked out of the UFC for missing weight against TRT Vitor, mind you, losing to him, and then going out to World Series of Fighting and breaking Andrei Arlovsky's jaw at heavyweight. This is a welterweight moving up.
Nuts. That dude's a real life Pokemon.
Yeah, he evolved. He evolved 100%. Like he's I don't know. He's a Gyarados or something. I don't know. That's not fair though. If we're gonna get into Pokemon shit, he was no Magikarp. He was always good. But
let's see. Maybe like a Golem to I forget the progression, but the rock ones.
So for anyone who's ever called me a nerd in the comments, you've been confirmed. We just made Pokemon analogies.
Hey, we're
Johnson's career trajectory.
We'll get like 6 comments total on our page, man. So don't worry about it.
I love it. But yeah, so like that's the other side of it. You know, like Rumble Johnson essentially after that Arlovsky loss, or win rather, Arlovsky lost. Breaking his jaw, everybody's like, we got to get him back in the UFC. We don't care how many times he missed weight in the past and how pissed off the Fertitta brothers were and Dana were at him. Let's bring him back in. And sure enough, he started winning after that. So one big win can absolutely change it around, and it already started to with Kevin Lee. Absolutely. So that's the good side about it. It's a double-edged sword, 100%. So
for sure. I've been thinking about this for a while. Rumble was talking about a comeback. What, like 4 or 5 months ago? He was kind of.
He said March.
Yeah,
he said March. He actually targeted March.
I was thinking Jairzinho versus Rumble should have been the fight.
That's great. That's fantastic.
I don't love the JDS fight versus Jairzinho. It's going to be cool. I'll watch it. You know, I watch everything, but I just think that would have been the real teller for both of them.
Well, the interesting thing was, so I think that was from a Helwani show interview that he said, all right, I want to come back in March. Of course, the pandemic started hit around that time, so that's going to give anybody goosebumps, even though it didn't really hit until the end of March when they really started locking shit down. But I imagine that's probably what pushed it back. But if you've noticed, like when you look at his Instagram, he's looking lean. Like he looks like a light heavyweight again, rather than the heavyweight bodybuilder he was looking like when he was facing off with John Jones for fun at a BKFC event or whatever. So, yeah, I actually think he might come back as light heavyweight, which makes a ton of sense because look who's not there anymore. DC's not there anymore. Yeah. And the big match with John Jones, which is really the only guy he hasn't beaten in the division aside from Daniel Cormier. I mean, destroyed Gus, destroyed Glover. He destroyed everyone else basically at the top of the division when he was there. Obviously Anthony Smith and Santos are there and Reyes, Jan is, really coming to his own. So he's got a lot of things that he would need to contend with there. But considering how well he did and the fact that it gives him that lane towards John Jones, which might keep John Jones still down at light heavyweight, and God knows these, retirement issues with pay and stuff like that are keeping him from going to heavyweight. That might be one that he would be like, all right, yeah, I'll end this kind of money issue because I've wanted that Anthony Johnson fight. I don't think he should go right into a title picture. I don't think that would be fair.
But that's his stipulation, though. He's like, I want to fight for a belt. And it's like, well, fuck, dude. Like,
yeah, I think we all want him back, but and I think some people want him back bad enough for that, but I don't want him back bad enough to where because I am a proponent of real sport type kind of shit. Like I want to see Jan fight for the title. I want to see Reyes get his rematch. I was just about to
ask you that. Who gets it? Because people are saying Reyes does. Hold on. Sorry, my mom was calling me. Hi, Mom.
Hi,
Mom. What was I saying?
Mama Slick.
Slick
Diaz. I don't know
exactly. Man, do you remember what we were talking about?
So you were going to ask me who should get the title shot next. Absolutely Reyes. I scored the fight for him. I was there in Houston. I absolutely thought he won the fight. I thought it was close enough to call it a decent enough decision to call for Jones. I disagreed with that, but I did think it was close enough because really if you look at the third, fourth, and fifth rounds, that was when John started to take over. Reyes started to gas. He was still landing big shots, mind you. But I just think it's a ridiculous kind of like way of handling close decision losses. If you and especially people really hate Jones, and Jones has given people all the ammunition to hate him in the world because he's hit pregnant ladies with his car. He's had all the USADA violations. You know, he's wrecked Bentleys. You know, he can't seem to hire an Uber driver. Whatever you want to say about him, all these things are true, and so there are good reasons to hate him. But, you know, I think it's also ridiculous that you don't judge people based on what they're actually doing. Like, I don't give a fuck what I think about anybody. Like Colby Covington, like, I made a video trashing him before he fought at UFC 245 versus Usman. But all throughout that video, I was like, he's a great fighter. I just think the gimmick's shitty. Like, I don't, and most people thought that was about Donald Trump or something like that. I don't give a fuck who people politics are. Like, Kevin Lee endorsed Bernie Sanders. If he made that a part of his gimmick, I would hate that too, because politics suck a fat dick. Like in 2020, who the fuck is just like, yeah, politics, man.
Dude, I'm so apolitical, it's nuts. I'm sure most people are at this point.
I mean, like, it's the same thing that they say, like, opinions are like assholes. You know, that's something that fighters say. The same thing goes with politics. We all have thoughts on politics. Who the fuck wants to talk about that when you're just trying to have fun drinking a beer on a Saturday night?
Like, I could not care less about what you think, about that.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck that Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders. I don't give a fuck that Kevin Lee did. I don't give a fuck that Colby Covington's been to the White House and Dana White loves him too. Like, I don't give a fuck about any of that. I just want to see how well they do in the cage, and I just think Colby sucks, like that kind of shit, and making fun of dead people and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think Colby is, I think he's a trash human being. Like, I'll say that out loud. Like, I don't care about his politics. But at the end of the day, and the larger point that I'm kind of getting at here about decisions and the Jones-Reyes thing is Colby, I think, was winning that fight. Like, I don't give a fuck what I think about Colby. I think he was winning that fight before, you know, he got stopped. And I thought it was kind of I don't even think it was necessarily the best stoppage. So for my taste, that's the same thing that I apply to Jones. You know, like, I've clearly been out on a platform saying that I do not like Colby Covington. That's broadcast. So I don't care. I care about their performance. Like, none of the shit you do outside the cage should affect what matters inside the cage. Obviously, it's going to affect the aftermath and it's going to affect people's investment into the fight, but score the fight based on its own merit. So no matter what you think about Jones, in the same way that I've just talked about Colby here, Jones still outlasted Reyes in that fight and did enough to win at least 2 of those rounds, in my opinion. I thought Reyes did win 3 rounds, but, you know, that's just the way that people see close decisions. If your guy didn't win, and especially if you hate the other guy, oh, it's a robbery. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not a robbery. It was a close fight. It was a really close fight. So
the thing that gets me riled up about the current state of the light heavyweight division is the fact that Jan Blachowicz versus Corey Anderson was booked as their rematch to be the #1 contender fight. And as soon as it happened, John said, let's do it. And people totally forgot that Jan Blachowicz even exists. And they were like, let's give him like, I'm not disagreeing that a rematch for Dominic Reyes is warranted. What's up?
Oh, I think I'm getting an Amazon Prime delivery.
You can step out and do it real quick.
No, it's super chill. I don't think I need to sign for it or anything. I can't actually. Yeah, let me double check.
Go ahead, dude. Yeah, so this has been a chat with Jason Hartley from MMA On Point. If you're not following them, which I'm sure you do, make sure to follow them. Make sure to follow MMA Island, which is our platform, on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. We're trying to, somewhat follow in their footsteps, man. This has been a really great chat with one of the people who, or one of the platforms that, I'm taking a lot of inspiration from as far as making it myself in the MMA media world. So this is really lovely to get to talk to Jason. This is a blast for me. I hope y'all are liking it. If you're enjoying it, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for MMA Island. We're closing in on 1,000 followers, everybody. And that's a big deal for us. So we would really appreciate it if you helped us get to that goal by sharing it, commenting, liking, yada, 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 this, that, and the third. The man's got the box.
So we were talking earlier about how there are like no real fans of MMA like around here. Well, I don't even know if I got into that. But dude, the Prime delivery guy was like, I recognized the name on the box. I saw it say MMA on Point. We're working on some sponsorships right now, and I'm not sure who this is from. So, and I probably shouldn't reveal it yet because I'll reveal it when it happens. But I'm quite sure that's from a sponsorship, or else it wouldn't say MMA on Point on it. But the guy actually recognized me. That never happens. Like
feeling a little celebrity, are we?
Dude, nobody in Tennessee knows what the fuck. I could walk in a public place and nobody would recognize me. Like the only people that have ever hit me up about MMA on Point that live here are people that know me already. They're like, oh wow, I just happened to notice that you have this channel or whatever. I guess that's cool. I guess like no one
that's wild.
Like when I went to Houston, so that was the Reyes versus Jones fight. I got recognized by, I don't know, probably 30, 40 people just from doing press stuff that would just kind of come up and like, oh, are you the dude from Man on Point? That never happens in Tennessee. Never, ever, ever happens. Like we get like one show a year and it's Artem Lobov versus Cub Swanson as the main event type kind of thing. You know, like we did get Pettis versus Thompson, which was pretty badass last year. But it's just not a big MMA city. So
I didn't even realize that fight was there. Wow.
Yeah, so that was like really kind of surreal because that just never happened. So yeah, pretty dope. I'm excited.
Moving up the celebrity letter tier.
You got recognized one time this year in your home state.
Yeah, plus 25% to the next letter grade.
There you go. Yeah, let's add a little bit.
Let's see. So
sorry about that.
No, don't worry. It gave me a chance to give a little, spiel. I'm gonna keep it in. I think it was kind of fun, if that's okay.
I'm cool with it, dude. And, yeah.
Cool. But yeah, I think that while just to finish up that Reyes Blachowicz Jones talk, I think that Blachowicz really I think that's the fight because that's what we were told. Like I'm not about going back and forth. I think that Dominic Reyes deserves a rematch and he can just wait it out until the next one. But I think that we were told that the winner of Corey Anderson, Jan Blachowicz, was gonna get Jones, and that's what I want to see. I think that it would be a disappointment to see him have to do another one.
Yeah. Like I think Reyes absolutely gets the immediate rematch, and then we give Jan, and then. It's so difficult because I actually asked Jones this. So on the Rio Rancho card, that was when Jan beat Corey Anderson. And I actually asked him this. I was like, you've been talking about moving up to heavyweight for a while, and this was before all the Ngannou stuff went down. I was like, is it really truly possible to clear out a division? Because people keep popping up. Like now
he's almost there. I think Jan's the last one.
Yeah, but I think people said that. Like nobody was hyped about the Reyes match. Nobody was. So like I remember doing interviews with Reyes actually the week of their fight, and nobody was giving Reyes a shot. Everybody was like, this is a squash match. All he's got is a left hand. He's not going to be able to do anything to Jones. And actually everything that Reyes was saying was resentment towards all the fan backlash. So if you watch any of those interviews before that fight, everybody was counting Reyes out. Nobody thought that dude would do enough in a lot of people's eyes to say he won, much less, almost, finish Jones.
What a performance by that guy, man. Congratulations to Reyes for an outstanding performance when everyone counted you out. That's my kind of thing. Like that congrats to, he's never going to see this, but congrats.
Hey Reyes, I know you watch all of our stuff. No. Yeah, like I think it's one of those kind of things where unless it's like a developing division, like 125 is a developing division for the women's side of things. So is 135, and 145 doesn't exist. It's much easier to clear out divisions like that. But 205, man, every time you think it's cleared out, somebody pops up. Somebody always does. And Santos, won on the judges' scorecards for at least one judge, when they fought at 239. So it's like, it just shows you how out of nowhere some of these contenders can come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because if you think about it, if Johnny Walker would have won his last 2 fights, he'd be fighting for it right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Because of the hype.
Yeah. Yeah. If he finished Corey Anderson, it probably would have just been on a totally different trajectory. Like he would have been.
Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted for no reason.
Oh, you son of a bitch. No, you're good. I've been interrupting you too. We're having a natural conversation, so it just happens. But like, I feel like he might have even gotten the title shot off of Corey, because that was what they were angling for with Reyes versus Weidman, was possibly to give Weidman a shot just because it was the big name value. They're both from the New York area. There was this kind of built-in rivalry of, they were champions at the same time, all that kind of stuff was going on. And so, I think Johnny Walker could have even got a title shot just off of Corey Anderson if he knocked him out,
Yeah. Did you see that he turned down a fight with Jim Crute?
Really?
Yeah, Jim Crute called him out. He said, "Where's Johnny?" basically. And the UFC, according to Jim Crute's website, or according to Jimmy Crute's Instagram, he called him out. The UFC wanted it, Jim wanted it, and then Johnny Walker declined. I think it would have been a great fight.
Yeah, like Jimmy Crute makes a lot of sense. He's right in that kind of area of the division there. I think Johnny Walker, unfortunately, has kind of shown that he's more around the perimeter of the top 15, if I'm being honest, just with how bad the wrestling was in the last fight.
Yeah.
That fight would make a ton of sense, Man, it's kind of wild how that career is turned within a few months.
We'll see what happens because, he's with some talented folks training-wise, so we'll see if they can unlock some more stuff out of him.
That was what I was going to say. Well, maybe it could be as simple as like, let's take some more time off and just work on wrestling like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Because obviously he got knocked out by Corey Anderson, so it's not just wrestling, but clearly he can't go back into another fight with anybody that has any wrestling ability without having worked on it first. Like,
if
the Sean
O'Malley fight happened tomorrow, I think he smokes him. I'll be honest.
You think Walker smokes Crute?
I think Crute smokes Walker.
Yeah, he's pretty well rounded, so I could see Crute doing that. Absolutely. Yeah.
I just got 2 more questions for you, Jason. We've already been talking. Well,
I gotta go.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Cut it, Slick. We're out. Let's see. This is one of our community questions. What do you make of AI predictions and the surge it's making in the MMA odds world recently? Because there's a lot of people developing algorithms and calculators and this and that to try to, gain an edge on predictions or even betting. What do you think of all that? Yeah,
so I'm not super savvy on that because I don't actually do a lot of betting. Like before, some of the previous big ones like Khabib versus Conor, I wanted to do a betting video, but betting isn't really huge in Tennessee. It's basically online betting because it's illegal under, really under normal pretenses. You can't walk into
a casino
here. Exactly. Yeah. So it's not huge here and I don't really know anything about it. And my issue was, I could just ask somebody, hey, somebody who knows a lot about betting, hit me up. But I can't really vouch for that. I almost want it to be somebody that I really know well making those predictions. But we actually did do a video along those lines. It was the future of MMA. Like, I can't remember what it was. It was like future tech in MMA or something like that, talking about how they could use drones inside the cage, how they could start using, micro drones though, like really small ones.
Yeah.
So, and then like having gloves that have like feedback sensors in it. So like, when we see Ngannou knock out Alistair Overeem, he hits him with a massive uppercut.
You get a pop-up graphic.
Yeah, you could literally get that, or you could literally get like the measure of force that he hit him with his right hand. Yeah. Like because the sensors are built into the gloves. Like it's weightless, you can't perceive anything of it wearing the glove. It just gives you that instant feedback. And one of the other things that we did talk about was AI predictions and how insanely good they're starting to get in other mainstream sports.
Yeah.
And how people are actually starting to kind of resent it because
it takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, because then you're like, well, I guess I know who's going to win this football game now. Like, so I might as well, not get my hopes up if my team's going to lose and I already know it.
Yeah.
obviously I think fighting has way more variables, that could be something as benign as, I don't know, maybe they had a stomach flu a week into the camp, which is anything that's really going to hurt you for the rest of it, but it could be just a little bit enough off by the time you get to the fight 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, whatever it ends up being. And you're just off your game. Or you just weren't feeling right that day. Like maybe you're just feeling kind of lightheaded and kind of out of it. We all have days like that, where, I don't know, you're just walking around with a buddy or something like that, going to a movie or something. And you're like, dude, I'm out of it today. Like I just don't feel right today.
Something's off.
Something's off. And, there's just so many variables that go into a one-on-one performance where, maybe LeBron James has that one day in an NBA game, but he has a whole team to help him. He can be 50% as good. I mean, we've, seen with The Last Dance and Jordan talking about having the flu going into some of those last games of the Utah Jazz or hangover, which is the conspiracy on it. They still won. They still did really well because he had a whole team to work with and he would manage to kind of rise above the issue. Fighters don't have that luxury because they're in there by themselves. So I do wonder if AI can really get that good at predicting it, but I don't know. So that's me saying I don't know much about it, and these are some blanket observations. But from your experience, kind of where this question is coming from, are they starting to outperform most of the, kind of top bettors out there, the top human bettors out there?
See, I know almost nothing about gambling. If numbers could not exist, I'd be with it. Like I'm totally language based, not universal language based. Math can bite me, but as I know a few people who are running some AI pages, and they're not 100%, but they're well over 50 or 70, which is crazy. Like that's pretty crazy for a 50-50 sport. One of our team members for MMA Island, he runs UFC Calculator, and he's run about 30 fights through it so far, and he's like 26 or 24 and something, or wow. So not bad, but I think there's always going to be variability that that's just universal math talking, and I'm not talking there's always going to be an added exponent or this or that. Like you said, the team thing, like you were just saying about Jordan. And I think there's always going to be a little bit of variables for that, like smaller things in MMA.
Sure.
Take the Shevchenko-Chukagian fight, for example. That was the first time Valentina wasn't in Antonina's corner. Like there's things like that. There's little intangibles that, could really mess with someone's psyche.
An algorithm has no idea.
You can't put that on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so, you actually mentioned the name of the channel, so Fight Island.
MMA Island.
MMA Island. This is a good joke. I knew that. So I went through your catalog and watched some of your earlier videos. You guys were called that last year.
Yes, but way before Fight Island. Yeah.
What
Dana,
fuck?
Run us the money.
Yeah, speaking of algorithms and predicting things, how in the world did you come up with that name before Fight Island was a thing? That's crazy.
Yeah. So our founder, our El Presidente, Chris, he runs MMA Island. We have a bunch of little outlet pages. Like I run Octagon Island. We've got Headline Island. We've got a few different pages because we make different kinds of content. But he has just always liked the beach, and he likes tropical. He went for an aesthetic, and then he just came up with MMA Island, and it blew up, I guess. I've only been on the team. I've been on the team less than a year. Yeah,
that's so crazy. I would have never thought to associate MMA with islands, ever.
Yeah, well, it's geographically, it's where he's at. He's in coastal Texas.
Oh,
yeah,
that's badass.
Yeah,
there you go.
This is the last question I have. It's nothing it's nothing big. I just want to know if you have an all-time favorite fighter, man. Do you have someone who sits near to your heart?
Yeah, so I've talked about most of the time I go into fights without much bias. Like I really try to pull all of that out as much as I can. But Cruz and DC are probably actually up there for me. Cruz, like just watching him back in the day, even before the UFC, just his incredible footwork. And if anybody's ever heard of the channel BJJ Scout, They have phenomenal breakdown videos of the way that he was beating Uriah Faber back in the day, the way he was beating Joseph Benavidez back.
My favorite trilogy, by the way, Faber Cruz.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I watched when I first got into it.
Okay.
I saw some Dominic Cruz smack talk, and I saw him lighting people on fire on the mic, and then I saw that he got, like, his only loss, or at the time, was a submission to Uriah, and then they had the trilogy, and he beat him twice. So I was like, oh, I gotta watch this. And so that's my favorite trilogy.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an excellent trilogy. I think of, Tito versus, not Tito, but rather Randy versus Chuck. Things like that come to mind. The Vanderlei initial trilogy with Rampage, because, it took two totally different turns with Knees basically knocking out Rampage and Pride. And then he comes over to the UFC. They both do come over to the UFC, and Rampage knocks out Vanderlei. Obviously, I don't really care for the fourth fight that much, but the Cruz Faber trilogy is amazing. So it absolutely belongs in there. But that was the thing. Like BJJ Scout broke down like how Dominic Cruz, really was influenced by Muhammad Ali, and how he used a series of feints and just kind of direction. It's seriously like what magicians do. That sounds like crazy, but it's like the idea of misdirection, the idea of making your opponent think you're going to go one way, but you're using that just to get a read on them, just to land a big shot. And obviously he's never had the power. And I think that's what I appreciate about him. I think Uriah Faber, speaking of that trilogy, was right. Like, Dominic Cruz is not built for fighting. Like, that dude he's had 3 ACL surgeries. He had groin pulls that pulled him out after the Takea fight. He had plantar fascia tendonitis in his foot. He's broken his hand.
Kudos for pronouncing that, man.
If I hadn't covered it in so many videos in the past, and obviously being one of my favorite fighters, I just can't help but, memorize some of that shit. But the kind of shit that dude's been through, the kind of stuff that guy's done, and the fact that he beat TJ Dillashaw after all that time off is just one of the most awe-inspiring, like, just incredible things you've ever seen in the entire sport. And then DC, I feel like DC went from this almost universally hated character. Like after the Jones stuff went down, where Jones, got pulled off the roster, people were calling him the paper champion. Yeah. He had the fight with Anderson Silva where he was getting booed out of the arena. And all the while,
that was the yellow octagon, right?
That was the weird, 200 gold yellow piss octagon. It was not a good look. It was not a good call. It was a cool idea in theory on paper, but it just didn't work. But yeah, like, he got booed so bad for that. Like, fans hated DC after that. And when he fought Anthony Rumble Johnson, it was the same thing. The entire time, I thought he was incredible. Like, he could be the best heavyweight ever, and he's been so underrated. And maybe there's just a part of that I really like, that this guy has been, I don't know, just kind of shit on for so long.
Yeah.
But the entire time he's been incredible. He was the underdog. They used to call him Black Fedor back in the day because they had the same, kind of body weight configuration,
I forgot about that, man. That's hilarious.
Yeah, like, he was literally an alternate for the Strikeforce heavyweight tournament and went all the way through and beat Josh Barnett. Like, it's so incredible, the kind of stuff that the guy's done. And
I wish he'd wear more hats. I miss Hat DC. Walkout Hat DC in Strikeforce.
Oh man, yeah, the sponsorships really killed that, didn't it? It's crazy.
Oh, Reebok deal's almost up. That's a whole nother thing. Never mind.
I mean, it's a good question. Will they re-up? I think it's been bad for Reebok. Even worse than the UFC, because they have to pay a guarantee to the UFC basically to even have the rights to put it on their apparel in the first place. Outside of Liverpool, so I went to a card in Liverpool when I went to visit Tom, and then we also went to Bellator 200 when I was there. That was 2 years ago. That was the only place I've really seen people wear like a lot of Reebok kits. And I don't know why. I think English folk enjoy wearing like the whole like tracksuit,
Yeah, same with Adidas. Adidas is big over there too, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we say it wrong according to them.
Adidas or what?
Yeah, that's how they say it. And it trips them out. It trips me out when I hear it from them because, I mean, we have songs like All Day I Dream About, All Day I Dream About. Yeah. I'm a great singer, by the way. But like,
I'd buy the album.
What's that?
I want to see more drum videos, by the way.
Oh shit, you've been
very cool stuff. Yeah, of course I went and checked it out, man. I'm a fan.
Yeah, it's a lot of work with no real returns on it. Like, it's like cool to be able to do it, but like Instagram flags the music. So I did one by like Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah.
And it got pulled down, so I had to lower down the music so low that you can't even really hear the music anymore. So it's kind of like, you can't really build a following off of that, which was my initial goal with putting the videos up. And
it's just cool to see your extra. It's just cool to see your extra talents. I appreciated it.
I appreciate that. Actually, on a side note, we're working on a licensing deal with a super indie artist out of California, but he mixes like a hip hop type kind of style with guitar stuff. So I've written the intro song for the channel, the song that we use on the Autopsy. I wrote that song. I wrote the song that I use for the Unfamiliars, and I've used some of my other songs throughout the background music and some of my essay videos. And I'm not a guitar player whatsoever, and I'm decently good at arranging music because I am a drummer, just because, that's just the way that works. And so I finally reached out to this guy. His name's Ben Rosette, and we've verbally agreed to. It's just a matter of, finalizing a contract to start using his music in our stuff. And it's so much better than anything I could create. So it is nice to have that musician side that you saw in the drum videos starting to kind of come through and weave its way into what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's super important to use what you're good, because what you're good at isn't your interests, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Like, you and I are both interested in MMA to the point where we do all sorts of content about it and this and that.
I don't like
but I'm an acting, like, I went to school for acting, but I'm not trying to be nice. I'm not trying to be in movies. I'm just trying to use the skills I learned for stuff like this.
Yes.
Like, so I think more people need to put more of themselves into their work. So kudos for that, man.
Actors are fantastic public speakers. I mean, when you think of great presenters on YouTube, like Game Theory, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the games that he covers on there, but every once in a while he just covers something I really like, and he does movie theories. That dude was a drama major. Like, he learned how to act. The same dude, Adam Blampier from What Culture, that dude was also a drama, acting class.
I could tell from those videos. That's funny.
Yeah, so it definitely does lend to what you're doing, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I think that's all I got. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, man.
Do you want to talk American politics real quick, or?
Yeah, I got. No, actually, I have no fucking clue about American politics. I'm one of these guys where I don't even watch the news. People are like, oh, there's a new radius ban or there's a new like quarantine, like, time, like you have to be inside or whatever, curfew. And I'm dude, I'm inside constantly. I don't give a fuck about the outside world.
Dude, you look like me about a week ago. I didn't get a haircut for like a month and a half. And I was just wearing the hats. And even wearing the hats, people were giving me so much shit on live chats and stuff.
Bro, trust me. Yeah.
The place that I go to get a haircut, because, to TMI, I'm in my dirty 30s and my hair's starting to thin out. It's like, I need somebody who can help me out a little bit. So
clean it up, make it look good.
Make it not look like I'm going bald or some shit. I have like a person I go to. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere until their salon's back open, because they're gonna make me not look like a total asshole. So and I look like an asshole enough anyway. So I'm with you on all that. But yeah, I was joking about the politics things, of course, because we were yelling against that earlier in the chat.
No, I was gonna come up with something funny, and then I just. Nothing happened.
Yeah, dude, that sucked. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, man. No, but you're totally like this. I've been rocking this since, dude. I got called Bieber in middle school and high school. I was rocking this before Bieber.
Shit.
I think I'm gonna go for a change soon, man. It's too much.
You got more the Andy Samberg thing going on, like Andy Samberg, Saturday Night Live, like mid 2000s type kind of thing, where you had the big long hair or whatever. Yeah.
Hey, man. I've been Slick Diaz from MMA Island. This is Jason Hartley from MMA On Point. He was kind enough to join us. Do you have anything to say to our millions and millions and millions of fans, Mr. Jason?
Oh my God, I just got so nervous that you said that just now. Holy crap, I'm talking to that many people. Jeez.
No, we dwarf your numbers, just so you know.
Oh yeah, dude, we're nobodies. No, I just really appreciate you having me on. Like I think for as big as our channel has gotten, I fully recognize that, Tommy Tohold obviously is a star. He was on Fox. He has like 60,000 followers on Twitter, for instance. I, on the other hand, only have about 3,000 relative to the number of views that we've gotten on the channel. People don't really give a shit about me or Tom. So the fact that, you reached out and asked for an interview, I really appreciate it. And anybody that's interested in, hearing from us, it is really appreciated because, I don't get asked to do interviews that often. So it's really fun to do it,
Hey,
I enjoy talking today, so it's fun to hang out.
Dude, I would love to have you on again in the future. I feel like we had a really good talk.
Yeah, dude, super chill, real natural conversation. You didn't come through with like, because that's something that happens too, and you try not to do that when you go to UFC events. When I'm in those shoes, is not just come with like a set, like what. Okay, no follow-up question. Let me just ask you the question I had planned. It's a very natural conversation. You just asked me what you had, and then you took the time to answer the fans' questions too. So I think it's really cool, and yeah, keep up the good work, dude. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, man. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. Party hard, everybody.